Welcome back to Sweet Pea and Bam. My name is Bam.
And I'm Susie, or Sweet Pea to Bam.
As you have noticed, we are in a new location once again.
Yeah, it's becoming a theme,
This
actually.
may be how it's going to be going forward. It's kind of fun, especially now we have these wireless microphones. We can take the show on the road, and we have the GoPro.
Maybe the
So
next time we'll not even be at our house. Maybe we'll be like literally. Maybe we'll be when we're in a different country. Who
maybe we'll
knows?
be in a different country. Who knows? If we want to continue doing this. Today, we are considering, I think, a fun topic. Not even fun, just one that I think
I don't know if it's fun.
people be interested in.
Yeah.
It might drive some clicks. We're talking about how to spot red flags. And what's the context? You're looking to date someone, right? We love talking about relationships. We love talking about things we've learned along the way. We've only been married for 3 years, so obviously we don't know everything. We know little, really. But we've been through the dating stage. We know it can be a mess. So hopefully we can share some gems or some experiences and help you find red flags and green flags. Sometimes it's hard to see a red flag when you're up close, right? When you have the heart-shaped eyes and you're looking at someone,
Yeah,
those red flags can turn to orange or yellow or whatever.
or green.
All right.
Maybe you have colorblindness.
Maybe you're just colorblind. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's good to know what the red flags are that way. Because sometimes you don't realize what that something is a red flag until someone tells you, like the thinking behind it. So, um, I don't know what is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear like a red flag?
Red flag is these are like non-negotiables, right? Maybe you've met somebody and like, hey, they're a pretty nice person, they're handsome, they're beautiful, they're looking good, but something is shared or somebody shares something with you about them, and this is a big stop sign. Go no further. It is not worth pursuing this relationship anymore unless this thing changes.
Mm, yeah. What is a red flag for you that you would say is a pretty major red flag?
I mean, you guys know us. First and foremost, they need to be a believer. They need to believe the way we believe. They need to want to have a relationship or be in a relationship with Jesus. And you're seeing some fruit of that relationship. And we're not saying, we're not being legalistic here, but, they profess faith and you can see that their faith, that they're living a Christian life. We don't need to spell that out, but they're a believer and they're living a believer lifestyle.
So red flag would be that they're professing the faith, but they're living a double lifestyle, a double life. Like it's not following through to their personal life.
Well, I would just say, are they a believer? Just to start, not
Oh, okay.
right. So just
Just period.
if they're not a believer, that's a red flag for me.
Yes, I think that's a hard stop for us. Paul says to not be unequally yoked with non-believers or unbelievers. So
Indeed, and I think there's. Have you heard of this thing, evangelistic dating or evangelical missionary
missionary
dating?
dating, I have heard that. I
Right.
don't think it's very wise.
I think people are taking the Bible out of context. Right. There's Hosea was told to marry a prostitute,
Mm-hmm.
but that was not meant to be a template for for us going forward. You can't.
Mm-mm.
We could think that maybe you will shine the light of the gospel on them, and then by getting married to you, they'll eventually become a Christian.
Yeah,
I'm sure it has happened, but it's not ideal.
I think more commonly people are dragged down versus up,
Right.
unfortunately. So yeah, I think that's a red flag. Like just stay away. It's your personal spiritual life. It should be your first your relationship with God should be your priority above other people, which maybe sounds selfish, but like really you can't evangelize to other people if you are not spiritually well. And so keep that in mind when it comes to dating. We have a couple red flags that we jotted down that were like one of the first ones that we came to mind. One of the ones we put, and keep in mind we brainstormed these episodes like such a long time ago, but one
Yeah.
of them we put is once a liar, always a liar. How do you feel about that? The sub note says from mom, i.e. my mom. That's her advice. She's very much like does not tolerate lying at all, and there's
And
there's things behind that, but
she has a good reason
which we
for it.
don't have to go into. But
Okay.
would you agree with that?
Right. You need to be able to build trust with this person. So it shouldn't take long. Like, hey, we're going to meet up, or wait, something simple. Like, hey, what do you do for work? And they tell you one thing, and then you speak to their friend or their family, and they tell you something different. And you're like,
Mm,
hey, like you're inconsistent. Like, why am I hearing a different story from two different people?
yeah. Yeah, I think that a good marriage, a good relationship is really built on trust, well, and communication, but you can't communicate effectively if you don't trust each other,
Right.
or if you are telling one thing to one person, different thing to another person. So really, candor or honesty are really important in a relationship, I think.
Indeed. We're on the same page.
Hmm. Are they a church hopper? What's your thoughts on that?
Right. So this is,
It's a red flag for you.
I'm not sure how we came up with this one because I wouldn't necessarily, somebody could be moving churches because they just haven't found the right church yet.
Hmm.
But if this person doesn't have anything to say about, if this person has nothing good to say about any church, and like,
Mm,
hey, like every church is bad. I'd rather not go to church. I just want to stay home and watch a live stream. If they're not connected to a church, I think that's
mm.
more maybe what we meant. Somebody doesn't have a church community. They're not accountable to anybody. That would be a red flag.
I agree. I think that that usually is a red flag because, well, again, Paul tells us not to forsake the gathering of the brethren. So church
Yep.
is very important. And one of the reasons why is the fellowship. Like people, like you said, keep you accountable. They, call you out, like good friends and Christians. I feel like will call each other out on things that they see as worrying
Right.
in a spiritual life. So yeah, it's kind of a red flag if you're always like the church has a you always have a problem with the church because that problem might be you.
Hmm.
um yeah, and I think we should be open to criticism from our brothers and sisters in Christ, because not to say that everybody is always going to say the right thing, or like that they're not projecting on you their own faults,
Hmm.
but I think we should always take it into consideration because God does speak through our brothers and sisters in Christ and helps open our eyes to our own faults sometimes that we are not willing to see, or are in denial or whatever. So I think that if you're not, hanging out in a church long enough for someone to even see that, then
Hmm.
that's probably a problem.
Indeed.
So,
Our next point here is, do they have sketchy friends? I mean, I don't know why we use the word sketchy, but who do they, like, are the people they hang out with people that, you know, are all of their friends non-believers? Are they always, who do you see them hanging out with, basically, is this point?
mhm.
Or, are you kind of worried by the people they hang out with? You know,
Yeah, the old saying, "You are who your friends are,"
right.
and there's a reason for that. And I think a big reason for it is just the simple thing is influence. Like you hear about people who hang out around each other, they start having similar mannerisms, they start
Hmm.
speaking similar way. Like even just married couples is a good
Right.
example. They start becoming like each other because they start speaking the same way,
Right.
or saying the same things or whatever, things like that. It's in the same way it's like your friends, because marriage is like should be your best friend, so it's similar in that way. So who your friends are, you're going to become like. So if you have they have super sketchy friends, they either are like that and are hiding it from you, or they will become like that eventually, potentially. So, um, yeah, that's definitely something that you should look at. Who are they hanging out with a lot? Because that's pretty good insight into who they are.
Right. Our next point here is, do they have a job? And do they have direction in life? Do they have goals? Do they have places they want to be? I mean, they don't have to go to college, but are they working on becoming an apprentice? Do they want to, are they, you know, do they have any desire to improve or to do better than where they are right now? Like
Mhm.
success looks different for everybody, right? So it's not about how much money they have in the bag. It doesn't matter what degrees they have, but are they headed like do they have drive? Maybe it's better. Do they have a
Mhm.
work ethic? You know, are they at home playing video games all day?
Yeah, I think that they, like you said, the caveat to how do they have a job is do they have a direction or drive in life? Because sometimes people might be going to school for
Right,
certain things. Of
right.
course, sometimes they can't work through that because it's just too much. In order to do good in school, they have to just be primarily a student. Um, but they have a direction. I think,
Hmm.
yeah, if someone is directionless and has no drive, then it could be a big problem, especially when paired with someone who does, because
Yeah,
then they, I feel like, will clash a
you're
lot.
unequally yoked, just in kind of in a different context.
Hmm.
But yeah, one of you is pulling ahead and trying to pursue some goals, and the other one is almost like, I mean, if they're not going with you, they're going to be pulling you back, right?
Right.
Even if they're just sitting still, right? Like a yoke is like a wooden beam across two cows' necks or two oxen's necks. So one is trying to go forward, other one is just sitting still. You're gonna feel that resistance. I mean, God forbid they're trying to go backwards, and you
Mm,
have a disaster. Um,
yeah. And like I said, I think take it with a huge caveat that like, do they have a job? I think is not necessarily like always looking the way that I think it's more the red flag is do they have a drive or
right,
direction, something that they're working towards because, um, I don't know, like our previous episode about roles. Maybe you get married and the wife doesn't have a job, but her drive is your children, or her
right,
drive is volunteering at the church or something
right,
like that, So, which are very honorable and respectful
right.
choices, but they're not like the traditional, like, do you have a career type thing? So, it obviously, of course, is the only different. I think the biggest thing, like you said, is like, do they have a drive to do something meaningful?
Yes.
You know, so. Do they dodge hard questions? I think that goes hand in hand with the honesty part.
Yep. Yep. Like, hey, have you dated anybody else? And that's, I mean, and that's probably not a first date question, but eventually you're gonna have to talk about previous relationships. And if they're
Mhm.
like, I don't want to talk about previous relationships, it's like, why not?
Yeah.
Or have you ever, been in trouble with the law or something? I mean, that's kind of a random question, but what's another good hard question? Like, what's your relationship with your parents like? And
Yeah.
for maybe for some people, I mean, depending, right? You could be like, oh, I love my parents, but it could also be like, hey, I don't really like my parents, and it's like, well, we're gonna have to talk about that stuff eventually. But if they just shut down, I mean, we spoke about this in another episode. About are they available? Are you available? Like in
Yeah.
terms of
Mhm.
are you
Emotionally.
even ready to date at all? Right?
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
think that could be a red flag of just somebody who's very guarded, somebody who's very vulnerable, and it might just not be a good time for them. Maybe they're a great person, but they're still recovering from something, or they're just not ready to be intimate. No, not
Right.
not even talking about physical intimacy, just emotional
Emotional.
intimacy.
Yeah, I've even heard things like the guy telling the girl, "Well, we can like learn about that or talk about that when we're married." And it's like,
No,
no,
no, no, sir,
you
no,
need
sir.
to discuss that now because that might change whether or not you should be getting married. So yeah, if they're hard, like dodging hard those questions, I think that's a big red flag. Like, what are you hiding?
Yeah,
Are you are you hiding something in the question itself, or are you just really emotionally unavailable and like you need some help just in general before
yeah,
you enter any relationship? So
yeah. You don't. We're not looking for a fixer-upper here. I feel like maybe there's like that trope of the mysterious, moody guy that is kind of like unavailable, and it's almost like a game, like you're trying to pull information out of him, and it's like
you're gonna save
you're gonna
him.
save him, and it's like no, I mean, I was a little bit like that, kind of. I mean, you could say from your side,
Yeah,
I was very awkward,
well,
but I wasn't. I was more like I just didn't know how to be in a relationship. I hadn't really dated before, but I wasn't being intentionally like I'm not talking to you about hard stuff.
yeah, and I was gonna say about the fixer-upper thing, not to say that like you can only date someone if they're perfect or you yourself are perfect, but more like if they have very obvious things that they need to work out, like before a relationship muddles it up. Like
Hmm.
they knew that before, but in terms of us, yeah, you were a little bit more emotionally I don't know what the right way to put it.
Stunted.
Stunted or like like EQ,
Right.
or
Lower in EQ.
yeah, like emotional intelligence,
Right.
where it's not like your actual intelligence, but it's rather like the ability to be able to interpret others' emotions and your own
Mm.
emotions and talk through them and things like that. I think maybe we were just at different points, advancements in that, I guess.
Well, true.
I don't want to say that because it sounds mean.
Well, I mean, I can say it. It was really rough those early days.
We had to basically, I had to be extremely communicative and clear
Right. And we were
with
and we were long
things.
distance. Imagine.
Yeah. In a
So
way
on
that
top of
helped. In a
everything,
way that helped
you
because
think?
we talked a lot. And it wasn't clouded or muddled up by like the physical relationship or like,
Right.
oh, we can
You're
just go
right,
to a
actually.
movie and like we're watching a
Hmm.
movie, but like we still haven't talked about our feelings.
Well, like the EQ discrepancy was brought up higher into priority, or was like it was exposed more because
Exposed,
there was nothing to
yes.
cloud it
Yeah, it
per
was
se.
exposed really quickly.
Hmm.
But it was good because like I had to learn things about myself too, like and ways to communicate. Really learning that to have good communication, you really have to be humble
Yeah.
because you can't just expect the other person to read your mind, but sometimes
No.
saying something, saying how you feel or how the other person, what something the other person did made you feel is very humbling. You don't want to say that. You want them to know that without you saying it. So, but you have to say it because they can't read your mind. And that's really humbling. But we learned that. And I feel
Right.
like we understand each other much better because of that.
True. True.
So it wasn't that you didn't dodge those hard questions. Like we talked
No.
through them. So I think that's different. Is like that other person might be not have as a high a degree of emotional intelligence as you, but that
Right.
doesn't mean that they're like a lost cause or that's a red flag.
Right.
It that can be worked through if they're willing to work through it. It's more like if they don't have high emotional intelligence and they also are not willing to work through that and not talk about
Mm.
anything and things like that, then it's like,
Just to summarize it,
okay.
I'm thinking like there's a distinction between awkwardness and being like elusive or being, obscure,
Hmm.
you know, dodging, right? There's a lot of awkward guys out there. I'll even say probably most guys nowadays with this internet age, with the less physical, there's so much on social media. Probably most guys are a lot more awkward than they used to be. So like a guy just being awkward and struggling in conversations and maybe not really reading context clues and stuff like that. I'm sorry, girls. It might just be, but it doesn't. That's not being awkward is not a red flag.
No, 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 no. That's not. Oh, okay. This is definitely a big red flag. They apologize only during extremes.
Well, we're kind of talking about the fruit of the spirit here,
Mm,
and somebody's character. If they can only ever see problems in your relationship as your problem and not their problem, right? Like, hey, we didn't do the laundry, and they blame it on you or whatever. I mean, you're not even married yet. We're talking about the dating stage. But I'm trying to think, what's a good example? Like, say you guys go into an argument. Say there's some heated debate or argument, whatever terminology you want to use about a certain topic, and then maybe you get clear headed the next day, and it's kind of blown over. But now we had an argument because of you, right? There's no personal responsibility for their part in the argument.
mm,
That'll be a red flag. It's not like, hey, I'm sorry for my part in it, and kind of admitting to their own faults, but they can only see the other person's problems.
yeah, that and also like emotionally manipulating like on the other
Mm,
end like
right.
say you have an argument or something and instead of like apologizing and taking responsibility like normal responsibility like emotionally manipulating you like for example say one person's feeling is really hurt by person say like I'm going to say the guy and the girl for example like say the guy talked really mean to the girl and so they get into an argument the girl is upset she's hurt whatever She
Hmm.
tells them and they get an argument over it. And then the next day the guy comes and he says, "Oh, I'm so horrible. I'm the worst person ever. I'm just like not even worthy of being dated. And oh, I'm so horrible. Oh, like woe is me. Oh my word." I'm
Gross.
just like, um, that's not really an effective apology. That's like emotional manipulation. And also like, because then the girl is gonna, or person B, whatever, is gonna feel like, well, no, you're not the worst person ever. It's okay, just forget about it. Like they're gonna want to like just, instead of like the guy or person A giving a proper apology and then person B saying, I accept your apology, like, well, let's move, how can we move on from this? They make the other person feel so uncomfortable and so guilty for even bringing anything up or like
Mm.
having any sort of like difference in opinion or argument that they like don't want to ever argue again because they made them feel so horrible about it. And so like if you see that type of thing going on, like that's definitely a major red flag. You should be able to have a converse, like say if we, had an argument or whatever. I think that it's perfectly normal to like we should be able to go to each other and be like, I messed up. I'm really sorry.
Hmm.
Do you forgive me?
Right.
And like the other person be like, yes, I forgive you. Do you forgive me for if they made any mistakes, whatever? And that to be the end of it. But if I were to go to you and be like, I'm like the worst person ever, you must hate me. You must hate
Mhm.
me so much. I'm disgusting. Like just leave me. Like I'm horrible. And then you're gonna be like, you would feel guilty, right? You'd be like, no, don't, why are you thinking like that? Like, no, like just forget about it. Like whatever, just forget about it. Like it's fine.
I mean, what I'm thinking right now is like this person just wants to play games. Like I don't know.
Well, I think it, like I said, it's manipulation. It's
Like,
like they want to manipulate you to never, I don't even know fully because I can't fully get into the head of the person who would do that, but I've seen it happen and it doesn't, it's not good.
yeah, it's
And
like
it's just like icky. Like, ugh.
you don't like I think that just when if you're having these kind of thoughts, like, is this person trying to manipulate me? Is this person being genuine? This person, like, I gave them some feedback, and now they're almost turning it back on me, and like, that, but they don't want to apologize, but they want me to pity them, or they want me to, now be their cheerleader, even though they're the one who did something
Right,
wrong. It's
right.
like,
Yes,
can
exactly.
you?
That's the thing that's
You
like
shouldn't be
weird.
having. You shouldn't have to do like all these mental gymnastics. Like if you're
Right.
like after the like you say you had a phone call and then you went through all of this stuff that we're describing and you're like spending an hour or 2 hours like what just happened? Like am I in the wrong? Are they in the wrong? Like what's going on? That's a red flag. Like it shouldn't be that confusing.
Right, because I think that as like an adult, you should be able to take responsibility for what you did do wrong,
Right.
right? And instead of just blowing it up to crazy proportions of like everything I do must be wrong. Like that's one thing. Like some say you got upset at me and about something like, hey, you said you're gonna wash the dishes, you didn't. I don't know, whatever. And I'm like, oh, everything I must do is wrong. I just do everything wrong, and I just never do anything right.
Yeah.
Okay, just to be clear, you might react that way in the moment just because you're like emotional, say like you or your hormones are crazy or something. Like, because I feel like sometimes you have those days where you're just like, oh, I just feel like everything is, I'm just so
Let's
horrible.
give some
But
grace.
yeah, so there, have some grace. But if that's like continuously happening and then they don't go back there and be like, sorry, that was me overreacting. I don't know what's going on. Because that's happened. I have done that, right? Not like the extent of what I was explaining earlier, but like there are days where I'm like, I'm just like, you just feel sad. And I think it's probably just female hormones just go crazy. But then usually what happens is like I have a meal because I was hungry, or I have a nap and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I was like that. I was so, I don't know why I was so emotional. But like when you see that happening over and over again, and they are not taking responsibility in the fact that like you end up apologizing when they should have been the one apologizing because you made them feel so bad, and that's continuously happening. I think that's more of like
Is this
what
what do you
I'm
say? Is
saying.
this gaslighting?
I guess, yeah.
Kind of.
I guess.
I don't know. It kind
I'm
of.
not a
I don't
therapist.
know. I'm not a therapist either, but I don't know. Like,
Gaslighting, that probably is what it is.
long story short, you shouldn't have to be doing all this kind of work, right? You're going to go through some hard things, but in terms of like if you feel manipulated, if you feel like you're not being communicated in an honest way, like yeah, that's a bad sign. And something to talk about. Hey, discuss it with a friend or somebody
Right.
you trust or your mom. Hey, this person said this to me. Is that weird? Like, get it out of your head. Like bounce it off somebody else.
Right.
And right. And what
Like,
this,
yeah, good having an outside opinion, I feel
right,
like it really helps because then as someone who's not affected by emotions, looking from the outside in, really can have a clear idea of like what is going on. Like, that's really weird that that happened.
hmm
And can it kind of help you differentiate? Like, was that just them being like emotional, a one-off emotional thing, or is like a continuous pattern
right,
of never taking responsibility and like gaslighting you into you thinking that you were in the wrong even though you weren't? I don't
right.
know.
This is a more nuanced
It's
point,
very
but
complex,
hopefully
obviously. So
there's something to glean from that.
yeah.
Well, hey, my love, we've covered all the points we had written out. Any
Mhm.
final words, messages, prayer requests?
I guess my final word is like I do think that we live in a society that is very vindictive. And I see so many times on the internet where like they're taking a video and the guy or the girl looks at their spouse or whatever, their boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, the wrong way. And they're like, all you read the comments, divorce him, break up with him. Ah, and it's like very like immediate cutthroat guillotine, it's over. Um, I
Yeah,
think people are on the so I think people are on the opposite end. It's like almost like sometimes they're too like there's not enough grace, like you said.
okay.
So I think like be careful to differentiate between red flags and between someone just made a mistake, like they had a bad day, they like didn't sleep enough, they're hungry, hangry, maybe both. Like things like that. Like have grace for people and don't like take the don't don't always be thinking the worst of the person,
hmm
but take all of this with a grain of salt. And like the way that my mom always said it was like you before marriage, you go with your eyes wide open.
Right.
And when after marriage, you close your eyes and like keep them just squinted because before marriage, you want to like see everything. I want to see everything. I want to know everything about that person
Yep.
to see if there's any reason why we shouldn't be getting married. After marriage, you're married, you know,
You're committed.
you're committed. So like have a lot of grace if you're married. And these are more things for like pre-marriage relationships, I would say. Like seeing if that person is the one that you should be getting married to versus you're married now and like you just should find fault in the other person and everything.
All right. Maybe
So
we'll make another episode about conflict resolution once you're married, and maybe we'll see if anybody is interested in that. Let us know. Maybe we'll make an episode on that
mhm.
because that's there's a lot of grace needed on that journey.
Yeah.
But hey, thanks for listening, guys. We hope you enjoyed. Let us know what you like. Do you like us moving locations? Do you like these new wireless microphones, or it's rubbish and we should go back to the wired stuff? Whatever. Hey, thanks for watching. God bless.
Bye.